Hey everyone, how's it going? Azren the language nerd here. Hope you're doing very well. Welcome to episode number 7 of Azren's Journal. This is a segment on my YouTube channel where I talk about my personal language learning efforts, and of course a segment where I give you guys a whole bunch of language learning tips. For those of you who have never watched this segment before, basically every single video has 2 different parts. Part 1 is where I talk about my personal life updates, aka what's new in my world, what's going on with friends, what's going on with work, etc. And then of course part 2 is where we dive into the language learning side of things. For example, talking about my personal studies and of course giving you guys advice. With that aside, let's jump right in. Right now on the personal side of things, I think Christmas is probably the biggest thing that's new or that's really going on. As I'm recording this video, it is December 24th. In other words, it is Christmas Eve. And so today, a little bit later, I've got a Christmas party to attend to, and then tomorrow evening, I have another Christmas party to attend. And I'll be honest with you guys, this Christmas season was probably the busiest Christmas season that I actually had ever in my life, because this is the first time that I've been really leading the language nerd community in my city. And so what that means is that I had to organize different Christmas events and Christmas parties instead of just attending Christmas parties and Christmas events, which is what I've done in the past. Apart from that, on the personal side, I'm really excited about 2 separate movies right now. Aquaman is out in theaters. I love superhero movies, whether it's DC, whether it's Marvel, although I will say I am kind of a team Marvel. I do prefer the Marvel movies and Marvel stuff a little bit more, but Aquaman's coming out. I'm excited. I'm gonna check that movie out probably this upcoming week. And there's another movie as well, which is Mortal Instruments. It's a movie that I'm interested to check out. I've heard some mixed reviews of the movie, but I know of the book series. It seems like something that would be up my alley because I like sci-fi, I like fantasy, I like action. And so it's gonna be a fun one to check out, and I'm looking forward to it. On the work side of things right now, I would say the biggest thing I'm focused on is growth, both in terms of sales, but also in terms of awareness and branding. What I mean by that is, on the sales side, I just want to be smarter with how I'm structuring things, how I'm putting my programs together, how I'm getting my name out there to get people to buy my stuff locally and buy my stuff. What am I doing to open up other avenues and other revenue streams? What am I doing? Blah, 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 blah. A lot of a sales focus, because I want to keep pushing that and keep growing that. But on the brand side as well, and on the overall awareness side too. So if you look at it, for example, this past week, I made 2 separate interviews with different people on the channel. I'll actually link those up on the screen and in the description below. There's some pretty interesting stuff that we put together that I think, if you haven't seen it, I recommend you go check it out. On the flip side, and this is kind of like the opposite, I'm trying to get the brand to grow bigger, but I also want it to grow deeper. And what I mean by that is I want to be deepening the relationships that I have with the audience and making sure that it's not just, I want lots of followers and blah, blah, blah. No. I want there to be some level of depth as much as possible. So I hopped on a Skype call the other day with a follower where I helped her with some English questions. I'm being mindful, I'm being extra mindful with replying to all the comments and messages and all sorts of really fantastic things like that. Now let's jump to the language learning side of things. So this here, as you guys know, is my journal, what I'm using for my Gujarati and my Mandarin studies currently. So on the Mandarin side, we're currently at 106 new words, which is a lot of progress from last time. I want to say it's like 30-ish new words, more than last video. Something in that range. I think a really big thing that's standing out, which was interesting, is that Mandarin has 3 words that don't exactly exist in English. So for example, when I was looking at my notes here, if you want to say a recipe, like a food recipe, we would say 食谱. But they actually have 2 separate words for ingredients, depending on if the ingredient is like a prime or principal or main ingredient, or depending on if it's like a minor or side ingredient, aka salt or seasoning or whatever. So you've got main ingredients, which is kind of like 食材, and then we have minor or like side ingredients, which is 配料. And so that was just an interesting thing that was standing out for me. because it doesn't really exist in English. That concept doesn't exist in French or Spanish or any other language that I really speak. On the Gujarati side right now, I'm at 20 new words. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is 6 new additional words compared to the last video. And I want to share a few things here with Gujarati that are challenging. First of all, despite the fact that Gujarati has millions and millions and millions of speakers, native speakers, it's a language where there's so few resources and it's so hard. It's hard to find anything online to support my studies. For example, if I'm searching stuff in a dictionary, like, it's hard sometimes to find the words I'm looking for. Sometimes a dictionary gives you like 4 words and you're like, I don't know which one it is. Or sometimes it doesn't even have the word. Or sometimes you don't understand a specific expression and there's nothing you can do to find anything online to find anything about it. So I'm finding with learning Gujarati words and really pushing that forward, I'm finding that it can be a slower process. However, I will say this, and this has been a big, big, big breakthrough for me currently. I mentioned in the past couple of videos that I've been working on a Gujarati blog. That has been really actually moving forward quite a bit. And so what I've been doing is I decided to start a Gujarati blog where I translate English stories like Rumpelstiltskin or like Goldilocks or whatever, Hansel and Gretel, translate those and write a Gujarati version of them, and then use my teacher to make sure that I'm writing things properly, the words I want to use are done properly, correctly, etc. I like this a lot for the reasons I mentioned before, so I feel a lot more engaged with my learning. I feel like I'm remembering a lot more. There's a practical like implementation and purpose to like all the work I'm doing with the language, and it's just fantastic. The story that I'm writing right now is Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, and it's just been a lot of fun. Now, in terms of language learning tips, I want to give you a note-taking piece of advice in regards to language learning, because ultimately when it comes to language learning, taking notes is very, very different and probably should be done in a different way than when you take notes for other skills. Now, for language learning, what I have typically done is I will have one notebook, whether it be physical, like this one, or digital, aka a note file on my phone, that is specifically dedicated to, I guess you could say, general notes. What I mean by that is every single time I learn something new, I write it in this general notebook. Grammar, vocabulary, my homework, practice sentences, stories, like everything goes into it. In this particular notebook, the primary purpose of having it is just the value of writing stuff down. When we write stuff down, it helps us to actually remember a little bit more, and it helps us to learn. And so by having this general notebook where we're writing all our notes, it's just a fantastic learning tool. Now, here's where things get a little bit different. On the language learning side of things, one thing that I will do that's a little unique is I have a second notebook, which is strictly for vocabulary. So like basically this one here that I've been using, it's only, excuse me, only the new words. I like having this specific kind of notebook because that way, if you need to actually refer and try and look for a word that you've done before, it's easier to find. If you're using your general notebook, it's going to be a nightmare to find any kind of new word that you want to go back to because there's so much information that you've been writing down. And additionally, when it comes to this vocabulary notebook here, I actually think for a lot of you it might make more sense to have a digital version, because what you can do in a digital version is you can easily create different categories. In other words, animal vocabulary, or clothing, or things in a kitchen, things in a house, blah blah blah, weather stuff, things I like whatever categories you want. It's easier to do that in a digital format. In a notebook like this, it's a little bit harder because maybe you thought you had all the things in a house covered off, and then you keep going with your notebook, and then suddenly you go learn 2 new words of things that occur or that are found in a house, and you're like, oh my god, how am I going to add that to my things in a house category? There's no space, there's just no physical space to write it down. So for a lot of you, it might make sense to have a digital version of it. A third notebook that I actually think is a good idea to keep, but I've never actually tried it for myself, but I probably should, is a grammar notebook. You see, the reality is this. there's always grammar points, and things that you're learning in your classes, as you watch videos, in your programs, in all sorts of things, right? But the thing that most people do is they will write their grammar notes and such in their general notebook, and when they want to refer back to it, it's difficult to actually find whatever grammar thing you're looking for. And so one thing I've thought about as well, and I really do believe it's a good idea, but I have to give it a try to see how it works, but it's worth you guys trying too to see how it works for you, is having a dedicated grammar notebook where you write all the different grammar points in it in a very neat and tidy and easy to read way. So that way, if you're ever questioning how a specific grammar thing works, you can just go back to your own notes and very quickly find what you were looking for. One thing I want to stress is that you're not necessarily just recopying everything in your general notebook into your vocabulary and grammar notebook. That's not really what's happening. All you're really doing is taking the key elements of what's in this big fat general notebook and making it more condensed, more concise, more organized into your other ones. Because your general one's probably going to be messy. Maybe you had like 17 practice sentences to get the present tense or something in blah 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 language. You don't need to write all 17 sentences excuse me, in your grammar notebook. All you might need is just the general rule, how it works, write it down, write your 1, 2, 3 practice sentences, and then maybe like your example sentences, and then maybe a couple personal notes to help you really connect to it and remember it. You're not just recopying, because that's going to be a big waste of time and a waste of energy. Anyway guys, it's currently just past 7 p.m. as I'm recording this. I have to go to my Christmas event. Thank you for watching this. I appreciate your attention. Please remember to hit up my podcast, The Language Learning Show, and of course all of my social media networks, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and obviously YouTube, at Polyglot Azren. And yeah, we'll chat later. Bye for now. See you.